The Mameluke sword is a weapon adopted by the United States in 1825. While the ancient Mameluke swords have not been supplied to Ukraine yet, and are used only for ceremonial purposes by the US Marine Corps. But we discovered that during the 2.5 years of the war, the United States and its allies handed over a whole lot of old junk to Ukraine. These weapons could not be sold, and their disposal was apparently so expensive that successive US presidents hoped to pass this mission on to their successors. The perfect example is the M101 howitzer. Some people complained that Ukraine was given these old American howitzers. It turns out that the Russians also complained about them, but for a slightly different reason. The answer surprised us. Now it's your turn to be surprised. So why did the old weapons that should have been thrown away actually work? The M101 is a standard US light field howitzer from World War II. No one could have guessed that this weapon of the past would start firing again. And even more so, no one could have predicted it would be so effective. The thing is that it is very light. The carriages of the first prototypes of the M101, which appeared in 1927, were adapted for towing by horses. Fortunately, in 1939, a truck-mounted carriage was developed for the M101, and the howitzer came to be manufactured with this particular carriage. Give us a thumbs up if you're also happy that the poor horses were finally freed from the hard fate of pulling cannons. But even with the new carriage, the weight of the M101 remains very pleasant, 4,980 pounds. Any large off-road vehicle, let alone a Humvee or truck, can handle this weight. The carriage of this particular M101 is a bit lighter, because its frame has holes from the debris. These are the consequences of a dense counter-battery fight. Ukrainian artillerymen say that the 105mm M101 releases little fire from the barrel when fired, and does not make a very loud sound. Therefore, the sound of the shot does not travel too far, and at night, it is impossible to see where the fire is coming from. Nevertheless, the risk of being detected is very high, which is why both Ukrainian and Russian artillerymen operate on the shooting and running principles. The M101 has a rate of fire of 4 to 5 rounds per minute. The range is 7 miles. In other words, the crews always operate near enemy positions, so they are always on the move. But does this howitzer have a future, or did the Ukrainian army get it by accident? Yes, there is a future. For example, Canada and Chile have modernized their M101s. The modernization includes the installation of a new Royal Ordnance barrel with progressive rifling and a new muzzle brake. And now these ancient howitzers can fire all existing types of 105mm ammunition, including the extended range projectile with the R0663A2 charge at a distance of up to 12 miles. It is not known whether Ukraine has received M101s with modernized barrels. That is, like 50, 100, and 200 years ago, explosions and debris kill, not blasters, to put it bluntly. A photo of an American 60mm mortar shell, the M768A1, was posted on social media. The Ukrainian military calls this munition a luxury. The point is that these mines are equipped with an M734 electromechanical fuse. Indeed, a genius invented this infernal thing. The last batch of these fuses was produced in the 80s. Then, the production of a more advanced electronic version, the M734A1, began. And although the old fuse has a 20-year service life, it still works ideally even 40 years later. Here are its features that are appreciated by the Ukrainian military. M734 has 4 modes: proximity air burst between 3 and 13 feet, near surface burst between 0 and 3 feet, impact burst on contact. Detonation occurs after 0.5 seconds. Delay after impact of 0.05 seconds in fuse explosive train before the shell detonates. The mode is selected manually, but the trick is that if one mode does not work, the fuse automatically switches to the next mode, and so on until the detonation occurs. And most importantly, the mine will not explode in case of a failed shot because the fuse is triggered after 100 yards of flight. Once again, even in the 21st century, explosions and debris are the ones that kill, not blasters. That is why the United States provided Ukraine with artillery shells with a cluster warhead, DPICM. It is believed that the last time the United States used cluster munitions was in 2003 in Iraq. In 2008, about 3 million cluster munitions were sent for storage. About 100 countries have signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions, but in the Ukrainian war, such shells and missiles were used by both sides. Hence, the United States opened warehouses and sent DPICM to Ukraine. These munitions have dozens of sub-elements. When a DPICM explodes, the damage zone can reach 1,000 feet. Thanks to this, one shell of that kind does the job of dozens of conventional high-explosive shells. So the Ukrainian army is slightly compensating for the overall shortage of shells with DPICM. But the oldest American ammunition in this war was probably the M106 203mm artillery shell. It was developed in the United States during World War II for the M1 howitzer, which in 1962 was designated as the M115, and already decommissioned long ago. Who knows, maybe we will see this weapon on the Ukrainian front line again. But there is an almost detective story associated with the ammunition because it is used by Ukraine and Russia. The thing is that the US and Europe switched to 155mm shells long ago, which is why the M106s were gathering dust and rusting in warehouses. But Ukraine is armed with the Soviet 203mm artillery system 2C7 Pion. This is the most powerful howitzer of the war. It has a range of up to 30 miles. However, there was little ammunition for it. Therefore, the American World War II shells came at the right time for the Ukrainian army. Yet what a surprise it was when analysts found that the Russian 2C7 Pion also uses American 203mm shells. How could this be? This riddle has a solution. During Shah Reza Pahlavi's reign, the United States supplied Iran with diverse artillery ammunition, including M106 shells. Most likely, Russia got them from Iran for its howitzers 45 years later. As we can see, even the Russians are running out of shells due to the hellish artillery battle. Analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, Washington, D.C., argue that the intensity of its use in Ukraine has proven that artillery is still the king of battle. The war in Ukraine has become an artillery war. Stable front lines and reduced opportunities for aviation have created such conditions. But this does not mean that time has stopped or gone backward, and the development of military technology has ceased. New reconnaissance and fire adjustment approaches ensure the success of old artillery systems and ancient ammunition. Whereas earlier observers used to sit in trees and attics, now drones and UAVs perform their function. More than 100 Russian and Ukrainian drones can operate simultaneously on the contact line within a 6-mile radius. A Ukrainian operator reports that his team detects 70 to 90 FPV drones daily, but can't shoot them all down. Drones have become a new challenge and another reason to remember the old weapons. So, the best hunters for drones and UAVs have become the German Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, which were developed in 1963 and have not been used by the Bundeswehr since 2010. Well, except for the United States, other countries supply decommissioned weapons. It's funny, but two paired 1940 designed Ehrlichon guns destroy UAVs not worse than modern systems. Although the range of automatic 35mm guns is only up to 1.8 miles with standard anti-aircraft ammunition, the Gepard ballistic computing system calculates the target's flight parameters precisely. Hence, a short burst is enough to destroy it. In addition, the old Gepard has a pretty good quality MPDR-12 radar from Siemens with a range of 9 miles. It can distinguish targets, especially drones. Of course, no one expected this. Although the Gepard's range is far inferior to even portable anti-aircraft missile systems, but a shot from a modern weapon may cost tens of thousands of dollars, and the 35mm Ehrlichon does it for $100. And one of the best weapons against Russian barrage munitions like Lancet is the American Browning M2 heavy machine guns of 50 or 12.7mm caliber, which have been in service since 1921. This is such a successful weapon that the United States does not even think about parting with it. Almost 30 armies worldwide have this crazy gun or its modifications in service. The Ukrainian mobile team with Browning M2 consists of 3 people. The Lancets fly primarily at altitudes of 1,600 to 2,000 feet and hunt Ukrainian artillery systems, ammunition depots, fuel trucks, and even aircraft at airfields. When a Lancet flies into a Browning M2 firing sector, the gunner's job begins. In addition to Lancets searching for targets, the Browning M2's hunting target can also be Zala-type UAVs, which conduct reconnaissance and provide target coordinates to Lancet barrage munitions. One shot from a Browning M2 costs $3. A turn costs $100 to $200. That is why this weapon has no alternative so far. Russia is also forced to search its warehouses for combat-ready weapons from the distant past. The enormous losses of artillery systems forced the Russian army to decommission the old D-20 152mm howitzers made in the 1950s and 60s. Russia requested shells for them from North Korea. It's scary to think what the Russians gave Kim instead of the 5 million old munitions that had been lying in storage since the 1970s. In the spring of 2023, the Russian army returned to service with T-54 and T-55 tanks created during World War II to counter the German Panther and Tiger. These tanks were removed from an armored vehicle storage base in the Far East and sent to Ukraine by rail. Up to 2,800 T-54-55 tanks may be in Russian landfills. But we're not talking about adequate storage bases, we're talking about landfills. But we are likely to see even older weapons on the Ukrainian front. The United States and Europe are actively emptying their arsenals. Will it be the turn for the Mameluke sword? Or at least the M4 Sherman and T-34 tanks? Share your thoughts in the comments.